Rose's cries echoed down the cold hospital corridor. She clutched her belly, her fingers digging into the fabric of her gown as if she could keep the life inside her from slipping away. Nurses rushed toward her, but it was too late. Again. Another miscarriage. Another tiny life lost before it had a chance to begin. But this wasn't just bad luck. It wasn't just fate. There was one strange thing tying all the lost babies together. Every single mother had given money to the same beggar. In the bustling city of Lagos, among the crowded streets and noisy markets, lived a man named Alex. He sold electronics in one of the busiest markets. Every morning, he woke up early, dressed up, and rushed to the market, hoping to sell enough to make some money. But despite working hard, his business was struggling. No matter how much he tried, money never seemed to be enough. His debts piled up, his dreams felt out of reach, and frustration weighed heavily on his shoulders. Every night, he sat in his small room, holding his head, wondering what to do. One day, Alex had an idea. I need to make my business bigger, he thought. If I buy more things, I can sell more and make more money. But there was a problem. He didn't have enough money to buy more electronics. So, after thinking for many nights, he made a big decision. He went to the bank and took a loan, a big loan. The bank gave him a lot of money, and Alex felt happy. This is my chance, he said to himself. He walked out of the bank with his head high and his heart full of hope. But then, something terrible happened. A man named Marcus came to Alex's shop the next day. He was well dressed, with a big smile and a smooth voice. I can help you, Marcus said. I have a supplier who sells electronics very cheap. You can buy from me and make double the money. Alex's eyes shined. Double the money, he asked, excited. Yes. Marcus nodded. But you must act fast. Many people want this deal. If you don't buy today, someone else will. Alex felt his heart race. This was his chance to change his life. He gave Marcus almost all the loan money and waited for his goods to arrive. He imagined his shop full of new electronics, customers rushing in, and himself counting big profits. Days passed. Then a week. Then 2 weeks. But nothing came. Alex called Marcus, but the number was not working. He went to the address Marcus gave him, but it was fake. His hands shook. His stomach twisted. He had been scammed. No, no, no. Alex cried. He ran through the market, asking people if they had seen Marcus. Nobody knew him. The truth hit Alex like a heavy stone. He had lost everything. The loan money. The business. His dreams. And now, the bank wanted their money back. Alex couldn't sleep. He couldn't eat. His heart pounded with fear. What will I do? He whispered in the dark, his eyes wide with worry. The bank would not wait. They would take everything. Maybe even put him in jail. One afternoon, as Alex sat inside his shop, staring at the ground, an old friend named Joe strode into his shop. He grabbed a stool and sat down, wiping sweat from his forehead. Alex, my guy. Why is your face like this? Business still bad? Joe asked, popping a piece of chewing gum into his mouth. With tears in his eyes, Alex told him everything. Joe, I'm tired. I work every day, but see my life. I have nothing to show for it. I need money, real money. I have so many things to do, but nothing is working. Joe nodded, his expression turning serious. I understand. But what if I tell you there's a way to change everything? A way to make money, plenty money. I know someone who can help you. Alex looked at him suspiciously. How? Joe leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. You have to be ready to do whatever it takes. No fear, no backing out. Alex hesitated. His heart pounded. Joe, what are you talking about? Joe leaned back and stretched, acting like it was nothing. Just think about it. If you want a better life, meet me this evening at our usual spot. We'll talk more. That evening, they met at a small bar at the edge of town, their usual place for hanging out. The smell of grilled fish and pepper soup filled the air as cold beer foamed in their glasses. Laughter from other customers floated around them, but there was a strange tension in the air between the two men. Joe took a long sip from his glass, wiped his mouth, and looked at Alex seriously. So, are you ready? Alex shifted uncomfortably. Ready for what exactly? Joe smiled, but his eyes held something dark. I know someone. A powerful man. He lives on a mountain, far away from here. He can help you. But you must be willing to do what he asks. Alex's hands tightened around his glass. Joe, are you sure about this? What kind of help does he give? Joe leaned closer. Just trust me. If you want to be rich, truly rich, you will follow me to see him. Alex's throat felt dry. The world around him seemed to slow down. The laughter in the bar faded, the clinking of glasses sounded distant. He knew this was a moment he would never forget. A moment that could change everything. 2 weeks later, Alex and Joe traveled to Ogby village. The journey was long and tiring, and the road was rough and dusty. But Alex's heart was filled with hope. He was desperate. He wanted wealth, and he wanted it fast. At last, they reached the foot of the great mountain, where an old man lived in a small hut made of wood and dry leaves. The villagers called him Baba Koto. He was feared by many, for they believed he had powers beyond human understanding. Baba Koto sat outside his hut, stirring a black pot that bubbled and hissed like an angry snake. His eyes were old, but they burned with something strange, something that made Alex's skin crawl. I know why you have come, Baba Koto said without looking up. His voice was deep, almost like a growl. You want riches, and you want your business to grow. Yes, Baba, Alex said, his voice shaking. I will do anything. Baba Koto smiled, showing teeth that looked too sharp to be human. Anything. Be careful what you agree to. Wealth comes with a price. Alex swallowed hard but stood his ground. I am ready. Just tell me what to do. Baba Koto stared at him for a long time before finally speaking. Now, listen carefully. He stood up and pointed at Alex with his long, bony finger. You will be rich. Your business will blossom. But there is a price. Alex swallowed hard. What must I do? You must disguise yourself as a beggar, Baba Koto said. You will go to the market, the streets, and the villages. You will stretch out your hands and ask for alms. But listen well, your true riches will come from pregnant women. Alex frowned. Pregnant women. Baba Koto nodded. The unborn babies carry a powerful energy that will feed the charm that brings you wealth. Each coin, each bill they give you, strengthens the magic. And to keep the wealth flowing, you must continue to beg from them. But be careful, you must always separate the money from pregnant women from the ones given by others. The special coins will be kept in a red pouch, away from the rest. Alex felt his heart pounding. And what happens if I don't separate them? Baba Koto's eyes darkened. Then your wealth will vanish, and something far worse will happen to you. A heavy silence filled the air. The wind blew through the trees, making a soft whisper that sounded almost like a warning. A chill ran down Alex's spine. His mouth felt dry. His mind screamed at him to run, to leave the place and forget everything. But then he thought of his debts, his struggles, his empty shop. He had suffered too much and he had lost too much. This was his chance, and he was not going to throw it away. He took a deep breath and said firmly, "I'll do it. Tell me what to do next." Baba Koto nodded in approval. He reached into his hut and brought out a bundle of ragged clothes. "Wear this," he said. "You must look like a beggar. And remember, once you start, you can never stop. If you stop, everything will be taken from you." Alex took the clothes with trembling hands. His stomach twisted, but he forced himself to smile. "I understand." The old man handed him a small red pouch. "This is where you will keep the special coins. Never mix them with the others." Alex nodded. Baba Koto raised his hand, and the wind howled louder. "Go now. Your journey begins." Alex and Joe left the mountain in silence. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and orange. But to Alex, it did not feel like the end of a day, it felt like the beginning of something dark and unknown. The next morning, Alex disguised himself, dressed in the dirty rags Baba Koto gave him. His face wrinkled, his back bent, his voice weak like an old man's. He sat by the market entrance, his hands stretched out, waiting. His eyes scanned for pregnant women. A few people walked past him without looking. Others threw coins into his hands. Once a woman, heavy with child, dropped a coin or a bill into his cup, he would mumble a blessing, his fingers brushing over the money as if thanking her. But as she walked away, her fate was sealed. Days passed, and Alex continued begging. More pregnant women gave him money, and each time, he felt stronger, more powerful. His business started growing again. Customers returned. Money flowed in. But there was something else. At night, he heard whispers. Soft, sad cries that seemed to come from nowhere. When he closed his eyes, he saw shadows moving in the corners of his room. One night, he woke up sweating. He looked at the red pouch, and for the first time, he felt afraid. But he told himself it was nothing. This was the price of success. And he had already come too far to stop. One by one, pregnant women across Lagos suffered mysterious miscarriages. Hospitals were flooded with cases doctors could not explain. Women who had been perfectly healthy lost their babies the same day they gave alms to the old beggar. Some began to say it was a curse. Others thought it was a disease. But no one could trace it back to the true cause, the beggar who wasn't truly a beggar. Alex's business exploded. He now had multiple shops, and people in Lagos began to whisper about his sudden rise to wealth. Many envied him, while others were suspicious. After each night of begging, Alex would slip away to a hidden corner, shedding his disguise, his youthful face returning. He would carefully separate the money, pregnant women's money in one pouch, all others in another. Then, under the cover of darkness, he would take the cursed money to a secluded spot and bury it as instructed by the old man. Meanwhile, pregnant women across the city, who gave alms to him, continued to experience the terrible tragedy. Hospitals were full of grieving mothers. People started calling it the Lagos curse. Yet no one could explain why it was happening. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months. His wealth grew, but so did the cries of mothers losing their unborn children. Lagos was drowning in sorrow, and no one knew why. One Saturday morning, a heavily pregnant lady named Esther set out for her usual morning walk. Esther was a devoted Christian who had waited on God for 9 years before she finally conceived. She was a woman of strong faith and never started her day without prayer. Before stepping out of the house, she placed her hands on her belly and whispered a powerful prayer. "Lord, cover me and my baby with your mighty hand. Let no evil come near us. Amen." As she walked along the quiet street, she saw a beggar sitting by the roadside. He looked weak and helpless, stretching out his hands for alms. But as she approached, something strange stirred in her spirit. A strong feeling, almost like a warning, made her pause. She closed her eyes for a moment and whispered another prayer. Father, if there is any evil here, let your power destroy it. Then she opened her eyes and walked forward. The beggar, who was actually Alex in disguise, raised his voice weakly. Please, kind woman, help a poor man. Esther looked at him carefully. She felt uneasy but decided to help him anyway. She reached into her purse and gave him some money. As soon as the money touched his palm, something strange happened. Alex gasped. A powerful force rushed through him, burning like fire. He jerked back as if he had been struck by lightning. A deep, terrifying fear filled his heart. He could feel something leaving him, something he could not explain. Trembling, he quickly hid the money in his red pouch and ran home. His hands were shaking. His breath came out in short gasps. This is not normal, something is wrong, he muttered to himself. That night, he sat in his dark room and brought out the red pouch. It was time to summon the unborn babies, as he always did after his day of begging. He spread the coins on the floor and began chanting in a strange language. One by one, the spirits of the unborn babies appeared before him, as they always did. They floated around the room, their tiny voices crying softly. But when it was time for Esther's baby to appear, nothing happened. Alex frowned. Come forth, he commanded, but there was no response. A cold wind blew through the room. He shivered. He tried again. Come forth. Still, nothing. Fear crept into his heart. He had never failed before. Why was this happening? He tried a third time, shouting the command with all his strength. But before he could finish, a mighty force struck him like thunder. Eag, he screamed, clutching his head as unbearable pain exploded in his skull. His body shook violently. His eyes rolled back. He staggered, gasping for breath. Then, suddenly, he let out a loud, wild scream and started laughing uncontrollably. But it was not normal laughter, it was the laughter of a man who had lost his mind. Alex had gone mad. He ran out of his house, screaming and tearing at his clothes. People on the street watched in shock as he rolled on the ground, laughing and crying at the same time. I did it. I did it. I took them all, he screamed. I took their babies. I made them lose their children. I am the reason. I am the reason. People gasped. A crowd gathered around him. What is he saying? Is he confessing? Did he cause all the miscarriages? Mothers who had lost their babies wept loudly. Some shouted at him in anger. Others prayed against the evil he had done. Soon, the police arrived and took Alex away. He was locked up in a mental hospital, where he spent the rest of his life raving like a madman, haunted by the cries of the babies he had used for ritual. When Joe learned that his friend Alex had run mad, he became very worried. He couldn't believe it. How could Alex, the smart and rich businessman, suddenly lose his mind? Something was not right. Joe knew he had to find answers. He decided to travel to Ogby village to see Baba Koto, the man who gave Alex the charm for riches. Maybe Baba Koto could help. Maybe he had a cure. The journey was long. Joe walked for hours, climbing hills and crossing rivers. The path to the mountain was rough and full of thorns, but he didn't stop. His legs hurt, and sweat dripped down his face, but he kept going. Finally, he reached the top of the mountain. Baba Koto's small wooden hut stood there, covered in dry leaves. Smoke rose from a pot outside, filling the air with a strange smell. Joe took a deep breath and knocked on the old wooden door. Come in, a deep voice said from inside. Joe pushed the door open and stepped in. The room was dark, with only a small lamp burning in the corner. Baba Koto sat on the floor, his eyes closed as if he had been expecting Joe. I know why you are here, Baba Koto said without opening his eyes. Joe's heart pounded. Please, Baba, my friend Alex has run mad. You gave him the charm that made him rich. Now he has lost everything. Is there a cure? Can you help him? Baba Koto slowly opened his eyes and stared at Joe. His face was serious. Alex's madness has no cure. Joe felt his body go cold. No cure. But why? Baba Koto sighed and shook his head. He broke the sacred rule. He tried to summon something he had no power over. The spirits have punished him. Once the spirits take their revenge, no man can save him. Meanwhile, Esther gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Her testimony spread far and wide, and people praised God for saving her and her child from evil. With time, peace returned to the city. The mysterious miscarriages stopped, and pregnant women no longer lived in fear. As for Alex, he was never seen in the business world again. His name became a warning, a story mothers told their children about the dangers of seeking wealth through evil means. And so, the city of Lagos was free at last from the terrible curse that had plagued it.